Your host of Local Issues, and today we are honored to have a great guest here. He is the new commissioner for the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs, and he has ties to East Lyme, Connecticut, and East Lyme High School. So thank you, Ron, for being here. Ron Welch.
So Irving, thank you very much for the opportunity to spend some time with you today. Yes, I was a proud East Lyme Viking, playing 3 sports, football, wrestling, and crew, and I really enjoyed my time in East Lyme.
I understand you were quite the athlete in East Lyme High School. You rode, I rode there as well. It's a beautiful, amazing sport.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I was selected as captain of the football team, wrestling, and on the crew team I was telling Irvin that we had some great coaches, great equipment, and we ended up winning the New England rowing championship in 1978 and taking second down in the junior nationals in DC.
That's amazing. And from there, you've been able to dedicate your life to our country, serving in the military, and then now recently appointed by Governor Ned Lamont as the head of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. So congratulations on your new role.
Oh, thank you very much, Irving. So, yes, I actually enlisted in high school. I raised my right hand on the 22nd of April in 1978, a long, long time ago, and I headed off after I graduated to the path to become an Army Airborne Ranger.
Mm-hmm. It must have been an amazing experience, stories that no one else could imagine having, right?
We did a lot by land, sea, and air, and I was able to serve for a total of 39 years and 3 months.
Wow.
Both in peace and war. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2005 to 2006. And ironically, I didn't realize at the time that my oldest son was going to also be deployed. So he ended up coming over. I was finishing a year and he came over around April time frame. I think on his 21st birthday he arrived in Afghanistan. And I left in June and he stayed, and he ended up getting deployed again a few years later. Wow.
And was there something back at that time that was the impetus for you to say, hey, I really want to serve my country? Was there some of your thinking? Why was your decision, hey, I want to go and serve the country?
So that's a great question. I grew up with some uncles in my family that were in the military, and as a real young child, we used to run around the woods in southeastern Connecticut, and we would watch Walter Cronkite on the news and try to figure out what was going on in Vietnam. And we would try to pretended to be those Vietnam vets or those Vietnam soldiers. So from that point on, I knew that I wanted to serve.
That's great. I also have had uncles who have served and different friends and relatives. So hearing some of their stories is unbelievable. And then one thing in our society, in our community, we always think, hey, let's thank the veterans, let's help them come back to our country and have a good life here. And I'd love to hear a little bit more kind of some of the mission and core values at the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So let me just reflect back just a little bit. After I finished and retired in 2017, the transition's difficult, right, when you've been doing something for almost 40 years. So I was fortunate to be hired in 2018 by Easter Seals, Capital Region, Eastern Connecticut. And they were starting up a veterans program, and they asked me if I'd be interested in coming on board. And as soon as I heard helping veterans potentially, I was like, yes, I'd really like to do that. So we received a grant in around the time I was hired, $2.5 million from the state to build a facility called Veterans Rally Point.
In Norwich, right?
Yes. And I know that your mom had a chance to come up and visit during a previous interview. So I really liked that opportunity up there, and I was able to work with a great team up there and provide some services and programs to the veteran population, primarily out in the eastern part of the state. Around just about a year ago, I had received a couple of messages asking if I would be interested in possibly going through some interviews to be considered to be a commissioner. Obviously very competitive. I said yes, I'd be interested, and as you said, I was very fortunate to be nominated by Governor Lamont in May, and I went on board in June.
Okay.
When I got over there, I quickly realized massive job and very big operation.
Can you give us a rough idea of
Sure.
the size? I think
Yeah.
it's how many veterans, how many buildings?
Absolutely. So the campus is 92 acres. It's located in Rocky Hill. There are 39 buildings. There are 1.5 miles of tunnels. And, you know, we pride ourselves as being the oldest home and hospital in the United States. The original Soldiers Home and Hospital was established out in Darien by a gentleman that had a lot of resources. His name was Benjamin Fitch, part of Fitch High School family.
Okay.
Fitch has roots, that name, throughout Connecticut. Mr. Fitch had a lot of resources, and he knew the Civil War the horror of the Civil War, and that a lot of returning veterans would need physical rehabilitation as well as, we call it now, behavioral health services, along with their families. So he built the home and hospital out there. They cut the ribbon on the 4th of July, 1864, while the Civil War was still going on. And in 1935, the General Assembly said, we need to do something in the central part of Connecticut. So between 1935 and 40, they built a current location for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And it's, you know, it's huge. It's 92 acres.
Enormous building.
You know.
Yeah, and it's something that for you serving nearly 40 years, you have a deep understanding of what it takes to be inside the service, but then also, as you mentioned, kind of coming back to your own country and coming back to your own community and trying to assimilate, whether it's work, health issues, behavioral health issues. There's a whole plethora of issues that your department's really helping veterans help with.
Exactly. And, you know, our mission is to serve those that have served. That's our mission statement. There's 172,000 veterans, according to the VA statistics right now, that live in Connecticut. But I look at it being more than that, because there are also family members and there are reserve components from every service. The National Guard alone has nearly 5,000 members. So all of them potentially could need some kind of resources. So at that facility, we have a residential and transition program for veterans that need assistance. Assistance with employment, social support as far as case managing them, recovery, health services, and we have a pretty robust recreation program. We can house between 150 and 170 veterans in our dorms.
Wow. We
We also have residential housing across the street for about 5 families. We have, very important for the aging population that has some medical issues, we have a 5-star skilled care nursing facility. We can house up to 125 veteran residents there. It is named after the Medal of Honor winner, John Levittow, from Connecticut. He was in the Air Force and received the Medal of Honor for his incredible service.
That's great. One thing that I was really impressed when I went and saw some of the work you were doing before at Veterans Rally Point in Norwich was just how kind of creative and innovative some of your strategies were for helping veterans, whether it's having support group, coffee hours, different areas for them to use some of their creative talents, whether with woodworking or other hand working jobs, and just providing lots of different avenues that you might not expect provided for veterans or for other people in need. So I thought your creativity in that regard was amazing. I'm sure you're bringing a lot of that now to the commission.
We did it as a team, and it's amazing to see, and I was talking to another gentleman today from 1080, Steve Parker, a little bit on the ride over, to see how things have evolved. Over 20,000 people have gone through the door there at Veterans Rally Point.
Wow.
And it's not everybody going there has issues or problems, but they have that connection with other veterans.
And that's such an important thing, is you
really
serve, you need to have that belonging, that connection to other people who can empathize with that for sure. It's really important.
So there are a couple lessons that I learned at Veterans Rally Point that I definitely want to bring over to the department right now. That, you know, pottery, for example, that engaging your hands with clay and your mind, thinking about the project that you're working on in front of you. So we're going to try to bring on some pottery over there. They have many programs that you know, engage veterans, but there's a couple things I'd like to add. Very important is our Office of Advocacy and Assistance. So we have 5 district offices in Connecticut in addition to what's in Rocky Hill. We have an office in Norwich, which is actually in Veterans Rally Point, out in Newington, Waterbury, Milford, and Fairfield. And in those offices, we have veteran service officers that can sit down with a veteran and help them submit a claim for pension and compensation. Those offices are not really big. There's usually an office assistant and a couple representatives. They have received over 30,000 calls this past year. They've helped over 8,000 veterans.
Wow.
And it's resulted in $125 million directly to the veterans and their families from the federal VA.
That's amazing.
In pension and compensation.
And it's all this compensation that they deserve, they've worked for it, and it's just a matter of kind of accessing some of these benefits. Is that right?
Correct. They had to have been either ill during military service or injured to be eligible to submit a claim.
And is there a certain area where you see most common for veterans for health issues that many of them are facing? We hear different issues, maybe with traumatic brain injury, TBI, or different things like PTSD and behavioral health.
You're right on with your comments, Irving. Recently, there was something called the PAC Act that was passed a little more than a year ago. And the PAC Act expanded benefits to those that have been exposed to toxins. And there's been an additional expansion, which is going to provide health care to anybody that's served in the military, essentially. But anybody that's been exposed to any kind of toxin, whether they deployed overseas or they were exposed within the continental United States, if they think that they've had an issue, they need to go to the nearest VA and sign up for health care and sign up to be screened. But yes, the generation that served during the global war on terrorism, a lot of TBIs, a lot of PTSD, now that we really know how to diagnose it, depression, anxiety, the combination of all those things are common.
And one thing I'm always impressed by with the Department of Veterans Affairs is how innovative the healthcare system truly is, that they're able to invest into potentially some new technologies or invest into some new solutions to help alleviate some of these conditions that many veterans come back with.
We are so fortunate in Connecticut, and there are tremendous VAs around the country, but I believe that some of the best health care exists right here in the VA system in Connecticut. And I think part of it is the relationship that they have with the medical institutions. Yale, for example, a lot of the staff from Yale also provide medical services to veterans at the West Haven VA, along with medical students rotate in and out. And up in Newington, it's primarily UConn medical students. But I believe the whole healthcare system in Connecticut, whether it's Hartford Health or Yale or whoever it may be, they understand, because we are a relatively small state, the needs, the critical needs to, if somebody can't be seen by the VA, that community care is really essential to be able to provide quality community care.
Definitely. And is Al Montoya still leading over at West Haven?
Al is down in DC.
Okay.
We actually hosted the swearing-in ceremony for Al's replacement in the fall. Her name is Dr. Becky Rhodes.
Okay.
And she is an audiologist, is her background, but she has tremendous passion for veterans, and she is coming out of being the director of the VA up in Vermont prior to coming down here.
Great.
So she absolutely understands the issues. It was a good pick.
That's awesome. And some people in the community might think that this is just for veterans, it's them getting their health care and these solutions, and they have nothing to do with themselves. But my understanding is actually, since the healthcare system for veterans is so innovative and with new technologies, working with the best at Yale and other places, some of these solutions, once they're proven and tested, can actually come and help the general civilian population as well.
Absolutely. And you think about the trauma and traumatic injuries, amputations, and the prosthetics that have been designed and made. Those advancements in technology are absolutely incredible. But you're right, there is PTSD in our civilian population, and depression and anxiety and all these behavioral health things. They're across our culture.
And it's just so great that the Department of Veterans Affairs can help come up with new technologies, new solutions that then are potentially applied to an even broader population, thanks to the hard work that they do for the veterans.
Absolutely. Our next mission is, being able to provide a dignified service when a veteran passes away. And we're really blessed to have 3 cemeteries in Connecticut. One out in Darien is at full capacity. We have one directly across from our facility in Rocky Hills called the Colonel Gates Cemetery. We have about 13 or 14, approximately 1,400 buried there. And then in Middletown, it is like a mini Arlington. We have 16,000 interred there. A big priority for us is a cemetery expansion. And in December, I was able to appear before our state bonding commission to ask for some bonding money to expand that cemetery. We have a couple more years left of capacity, and then we'll be full there also.
Okay, so that's great, trying to plan ahead and figure out the best ways that you can help the people that have the need. And I also understand that a big challenge potentially for your office is reaching out and engaging with different veterans, whether it's people a little bit older demographic from Vietnam era, or even some of the younger people in their 20s and 30s coming back recently.
It really is. The younger population, the way we try to engage with the younger population, I personally try to do events. Skydive for vets, they asked me to come and speak. There are some, we call them ruck and runs, different fitness type events that are all about suicide awareness, suicide prevention, and just having time to get out there to talk with veterans to find out what issues are going on with them, and if they need help, trying to guide them to where help is available. Social media, a lot of them follow social media, as you know. These events like this interview are really helpful to let people know what's available and how to connect with us. The hardest thing is those that, as they start to have issues and don't get help and start to spiral down, because things don't get better with time. They start to isolate more and more, and they end up at the bottom feeling very hopeless. So if we can somehow intervene prior to that happening, they're going to have a better life. They're going to have a better quality of life, and we'll have much more success. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this topic, but sadly, I just read last week the VA published some statistics, and you probably have heard the number of 22 suicides a day in the veteran and service member population, so over 8,000 a year. The total loss right now, since the VA started tracking after 9/11, ends up, so we lost the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, we lost over 7,000 were killed in combat. We have had 120,000 suicides. 120,000 service members have taken their own lives since they started to track. Completely unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable.
So it's really important for us to engage somehow. And that's a message I have to your peer group or anybody any one of the listeners that's on. If you know a veteran, just go up and talk to them. Yeah, you could thank them for their service, but make sure they're doing okay. And if you're a family member and you start to see one of your, one of your family members start to withdraw a little bit or get a little bit depressed, make sure they're getting help.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late to ask for help. And as I go around the state and do different veteran recognition ceremonies with Lieutenant Governor, we've done over 30
Mm-hmm.
throughout the state. I always include that in my comments.
Mm-hmm.
That, I can tell a lot of the veteran population, because of pride and because of that stereotype, oh, it's the crazy person with PTSD, and it's not the case. Somebody just may have some issues they're struggling with. We're all human.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether you've served or not. So I talk them through how it goes. It's confidential.
Yeah.
To be a therapist in Connecticut, you have to have a minimum of 3,000 hours of,
Mm-hmm.
training, and then you have to be certified before you can ever get in front of a real client or patient. So when that door closes, it's 100% confidential,
Mm-hmm.
and they have seen and heard many, many things that
Yeah.
people are experiencing.
And one thing I noticed too on your webpage, that you have access to different resources, whether it's the suicide crisis line for veterans, that
Yes.
immediately someone can get connected to someone, whether it's chat or phone support, to help them through tough times. Just as you said, there's a lot of these battles inside that, whether veteran or non-veteran, that people are facing, and just having that little bit of extra kindness, I think, as you mentioned, is so important. Seeing how someone is really doing and checking in with them is so important right now.
It really is. If somebody's in a really bad place and you can't think of anything else, then it's 911.
Mm-hmm.
The line you're talking about also is 988.
Mm-hmm.
That will put you in direct contact with a suicide prevention person that can really spend some time with you and get you the help you need.
Great. And I seem to be reading and hearing more about the use of therapy dogs with the Department of Veterans Affairs, kind of another avenue to help veterans to assimilate, to come back, and to deal with some of these issues. Are you seeing some action in that realm too?
So starting up at Veterans Rally Point, I started to see the service dogs up there.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous value. Absolutely. There are several programs around that actually train and provide service dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are at no cost. The concern is there's a small population out there that will go online, order a vest, put it on their dog, and it's not a certified
Mm-hmm.
service dog. So that is of concern when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been proven a tremendous benefit.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And one thing I'd like to question you and find out a little bit more on is just kind of the discipline and integrity that you can learn from serving in the military. We started talking about your time rowing and crew. There's tremendous amount of discipline there, but potentially how this kind of discipline from military and that lifestyle can be applied to whether it's education or schools and things right now in our society that maybe we can learn from the military to improve as a community.
Sure, I think the big thing, and I'm going way back now. In my own experience, I was an athlete in school. I wasn't a scholar, and the military helped a lot. The focus when I went in was everything was performance orientated, right? So it was the hands-on focus.
Mm-hmm.
It was, here's the task, these are the conditions, and these are the standards you have to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was assembling or disassembling a weapon, qualifying with a weapon, jumping out of an airplane, there was always a really good training model that they followed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of structure in the military. There's a lot of leadership, a lot of oversight as you work your way through the ranks.
That's great.
And the camaraderie is there. You know who has your back, to use that term. And we may not get along sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
when things turn really bad, everybody comes together to get the job done, get the mission accomplished.
Yeah, have the common mission to move forward on that
Exactly.
is so vital.
And I use the term, the military is a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
People come from all economic and social backgrounds and education levels, and that's what makes us so great, is that diversity.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And maybe we could just touch upon a little bit of what your office does to help veterans with careers and job placement coming back to the States.
You know, it's ironic you brought that topic up. The governor has established a workforce council, which we are part of, and the good news in Connecticut is the unemployment rate is extremely low. There are jobs available. Employment is so important for a veteran to stop that cycle of, starting to, I don't have, what's my purpose now?
And belonging as well.
Belonging and making that connection, that social connection when you first get back especially. So the transition out, the military has made great strides to try to do a transition assistance program. It's starting like a couple years out prior to somebody leaving, whether they're retiring or they're just doing their first enlistment. What's supposed to happen during that transition process is you're supposed to give a lot of thought to what you want to do and even develop a resume. But let's say that you're so overwhelmed when you're trying to get out and figure out where you're going to live and what you might want to do that you don't focus a lot on that, and now you're out. What do you do now? So what we would like to see happen, in addition to what we're doing right now, is every town in Connecticut, all 169, are supposed to have something called a municipal veteran representative. And that doesn't have to be a person that ever served in the military, but they have to have passion to help people. So in a perfect world, the municipal vet representative in Waterford, if Irving gets out of the military and needs help with employment, goes to see that person, and that person should be able to make some initial connections. You know what, EB is hiring, here's the point of contact at EB, or I have a list from ct.gov, and there's thousands of jobs available right here in Connecticut. So that's one small aspect. We have teamed with Connecticut Department of Labor. They provided some funding. We're going to do a request for proposal and send it out to some nonprofits to see if they can help us with the outreach part of it, to find veterans that are unemployed and get them, bring them in and help mentor them to become employed.
Awesome.
There's not enough maybe understanding or awareness of how some of these skills, military skills, transition over to the civilian world. For example, an Army medic. An Army medic gets a high level of training. So how does that translate to the EMT world or working in the emergency department as an ER tech? A truck driver, well, they have a CDL in the military, so that should easily translate to being a truck driver in the civilian world. Police officer, it gets a little bit more difficult, but if you're a military police officer in the military, can we use some of that credit and that education and get you on board as a police officer? So there's been a lot of research and a lot of crosswalk discussion, and a lot of people are taking a look at that and applying some of what somebody's learned in the military to the
It's so helpful, that if someone served 5, 10, 20, 40 years, it'd be amazing to use that knowledge and experience in the civilian world if possible.
And just, the leadership skills and how to plan and coordinate and organize, accountability. I mean, a relatively junior person in the military, let's say, a sergeant E5 that's 19 years old, may be responsible for millions of dollars of equipment and the lives of 5 or 6 different service members.
Definitely. And we're just wrapping up time here, but one final question is, what can the community do? We're grateful for all that you're doing for the state, for the veterans. Is there one last thing that you'd like to let the community know and the viewers know?
I just cannot emphasize enough, if you see anybody struggling, please get them to help. Encourage them to do so. If you're interviewing people and you have 2 equally qualified candidates, think about maybe giving the vet an employment opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Welch, so much
Very
for all
welcome,
your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.